thoughtful ideas and suggestions for guests and topics.
Events, programs, and
Welcome to this week's segment of Dialogue Houston. I'm your host, Lawrence Payne. To our regular viewing audience, welcome. To those joining us perhaps for the first time here for ACC's TV Dialogue Houston, we're here now every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. and on Saturday afternoons at 3 p.m. It can also be found now on Facebook. Let me thank you as always at the top of the show for your thoughtful emails, calls, and text messages concerning previous shows we've aired on ACC's TV Dialogue Houston, but more importantly, your great ideas for guest topics and subjects to be covered on upcoming segments of Dialogue Houston. For after all, this is your community affairs, public affairs show here on ACC, now in its 27th year. We're gonna look at the aspects that have brought us to this day now in the post-George Floyd environment. I have two individuals who were present this few weeks ago, Tuesdays ago, at the 60,000 person march here in Houston, in downtown Houston, from Discovery Green to City Hall. The two gentlemen are people who I have worked with for years in this community. They're very thoughtful, very insightful, reflective people, very caring people about the common humanity which we all share. First up will be our good friend, Reverend Patrick Miller, who is the rector of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Bel Air. And after we take a small break, we'll be joined by Jonathan Lack, who is the principal of ROI Ventures. Both of whom were present at the march, both of whom have been involved in civil rights and human rights issues here in this city for many, many years. I'm proud to call them both friends, but more importantly, I'm proud to say that we have those relationships that you hear me talk about on Dialogue Houston all the time, relationships based on mutual trust and respect that one must have in this environment going forward. Nothing happens without trust. And an important part about those relationships, as we know, that you've heard me say many times, you have to have, cultivate, develop, nurture, and maintain those relationships before you need them. It is too late in the middle of the battle, in the middle of the need, to say, I wish I had a relationship with so-and-so. So we're going to start off with Patrick. We're going to ask him to kind of just reflect and muse, if he will, on how he sees the current environment, but particularly the feel of being among that crowd and being with the marchers and protesters of the 60,000 strong that Tuesday in Houston, Texas. I could not be there because I am medically compromised, and the doctor said no. In fact, he's known me for years. He used the word before no, you can't go. So nonetheless, I am glad that these share vicariously with these two who were there. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
How are you? So great to see you, man.
Well, I mean, I just am excited to be with you and honored. To tell you the truth, I ended up at that protest and that march inadvertently. Monday before the march, I watched, as a bunch of people did, my sister clergy kind of removed from the steps of an Episcopal church so that the president could walk over there and hold a Bible up and have a picture. I was not surprised by that, but I was a little saddened. So I went to my own church and sat inside of it around 9:30 that night, feeling very powerless, which is an odd thing for a person of my status and privilege to say, but I felt powerless and sat there and for about 30 minutes, really just kind of musing on how I'm not doing what I should be doing to help reconcile our culture, particularly in racial issues. And so I went to bed, woke up at 7 o'clock. I got an email from Martin Kaminsky from Interfaith Ministries of Greater Houston inviting me to march along with other pastors. And so I took him up on that, showed up at the Hilton of Americas, recognized some faces, even though they're behind masks. And suddenly I am on the stage. And I'm on the stage with the family and the dignitaries, and I'm standing there and I sort of hold back because, quite frankly, television and the press frightened me. And so I ended up talking with Harvey Clements, who is a person I have a lot of respect for the work that he's done in Houston. And then we began, and it was just sort of, I mean, everybody will talk about it. It was just sort of overwhelmingly amazing. Houston, Texas is an amazing city. And suddenly you could see the violence. There wasn't any violence. There were people on horseback. We started our walk, and I was at that moment very proud to be with everybody and proud to be in Houston, Texas at that time.
The question has to be the response of the faith communities plural, and particularly the response of, like Dr. Stephen Wells put so well at the funeral for George Floyd, as the only Anglo-American Caucasian white person pastor on the dais with 7 other black pastors. He said what only he could say, that I, as a white pastor of a predominantly, more than predominantly white church, have to challenge myself and my parishioners, to challenge every other church and denomination to stop being bystanders, stop being on the sideline, and get involved in these issues of dialogue and discussion for the change that we all need for our common humanity going forward together as Houstonians. Is that not the message that needs to be shared now?
That's the message that's we've been needing to share the entire time. I think that we're just being reminded of it again and again. I got 2,000 years worth of Christianity behind me, and I've got Matthew 23:23 that I quoted to my parishioners, where Jesus gets mad at the leadership and tells them they've been doing nothing but tithing mint, dill, and cumin, when they should have been tithing justice, mercy, and faith. And come on, I'm a part of a system that's been tithing mint, dill, and cumin to this for a long time. Now, I will say, I am proud for the Episcopal Church's record in civil rights. I am proud to be an Episcopal priest in the way that we have worked to find inclusion for our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, for women in ordination, for all of the things that we do as an Episcopal church. I am proud about that, but it's not enough. There has to be more. We have to keep pushing, have to keep striving, and you've got to wake up little churches like mine and to kind of into the conversation and into a dialogue. I think one of the problems, Larry, is that we're just in a place where we're not going to have a conversation. We're just right or wrong, fault or blame, and nobody's into agree or disagree. And I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate the work you've done in the past to get us to a place where we can have a conversation where I agree with that or I disagree with that, instead of throwing insults and saying, never mind, go away.
Well, the Episcopal Diocese of Texas and you yourself and your wonderful Bishop, Bishop Dahl, have tried in many ways to keep this dialogue alive, to refresh it, to give it new legs and new wings. A lot of the work that Episcopal Health Charities are doing through their foundation and others really speaks well to this. I think they have come to the conclusion, as others have, that racism is really a public health issue and that it has affected so many things. The pandemic of COVID-19 kind of exposed that. It was already there. It just kind of took the curtain and veil off of it and exposed the inequities and health disparities so well. And I know that you and I have talked a lot about that, and there's a lot of good work going on around that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Again, we've been committed to it all along, but we've kind of put some money where our mouth is on things. So a $13 million initiative for racial reconciliation was begun in February, oddly enough, well-timed. And it does a lot of things across the board. One of the things, seminary in Austin Seminary of the Southwest received a $5 million scholarship grant to train particularly African-American folks into the ministry, to help with scholarships for that. That particular seminary also has a conversation going on about race and has dedicated a year-long chair for a professor to come, and then you can keep working on your way down, all the way down to creating grants for churches like mine to be able to go on freedom pilgrimage, take a pilgrimage along the Freedom Trail, but also to create conversation groups and ways to kind of move forward. But this thing is rough. It is so ingrained in us that it's going to take more than $13 million. It's going to take more than a couple of conversations and dialogues. It's going to take more than a 6'4" white Episcopal priest to go walk along with 60,000 other people. We've really got a lot of work to do. And I think this moment has spurred us into it, and I just hope we don't lose the momentum.
Well, I know you're committed, along with others that you and I work with almost on a daily, weekly basis, to continue this journey and to make this battle a reality for all of humanity. I think we have talked many times about how we share the question of what is the fair and ethical treatment of all human beings? All human beings' lives matter. All human beings are equal. That's the place we have to get to. I look forward to working with you going forward as we raise this ethical question, to keep that bar high in front of everyone, to know that this is the goal that we must strive for, and how we get there together collectively is going to be what makes the difference.
I'm hopeful. As no matter how sad I was on that Monday night after the Lafayette Square incident, Tuesday in that march, I got hopeful. And I was hopeful that Houston, particularly, can be an example to the rest of the country about how to move the conversation forward. So that's my closing little bit.
Again, thank you, Patrick, for being with us on Dialogue Houston. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for our relationship. I look forward to working with you going forward, and we're gonna make a difference this time. This is gonna be different than the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Bye.
All right. We're gonna take a small pause and break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Jonathan Lack. We're gonna look at this from his perspective and his eyes. We'll talk about some of the things that he and I have done together along this journey before all this happened, and that we plan to do going forward. Well, so please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
In these days, we're all doing our share to battle the virus.
We view an attack against any faith or ethnic group as an attack against all of us.
We are all in this together. Many of us are immigrants. The virus affects us all.
We all work together.
We are all Texans.
We're going to be joined now by another great friend, Jonathan Lack. Jonathan Lack and I have kind of traversed these waters together over the last few years around this issue of race and reconciliation and diversity and pluralism, and how we all come together and share. Jonathan is Jewish, and therefore his perspective is one that I truly, truly love to have and hear all the time, because he and his religion and his people, as we know, have been at this longer than any of us around these issues, quite frankly. And I've learned a lot from Jonathan. We're coming up on Juneteenth again this year, and just for a little pause, last year at the same time for Juneteenth, Jonathan and I and the Houston Public Library had a wonderful breakfast where we focused really on some of the same issues we're going to be talking about here today. And so it's a different day, a different environment, with basically the same issues and the same challenges, but also might add the same opportunities, the positive side going forward. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you, Larry.
So great to have you here. Now, when we talked last, you were on the road somewhere in Arizona on your way to San Francisco. Are you there yet?
I arrived.
All right, very good. I didn't know if you'd pulled off, knowing you, I didn't know if you'd pull off the side of the road somewhere and and just have this dialogue with us via Zoom. Jonathan, you were also present at the march. You were there with the 60,000 strong. You were there because I kind of knew you were going to be there without even asking you ahead of time if you were going to be there, because that's the Jonathan I know. So what was your experience and your feeling of being with that crowd, with the vibe and the energy and the passion of all those people around an issue that I know you care so deeply about also?
A lot of mixed emotions. I marched with my brother and his daughter, or one of his daughters. She was the one that told me about the march. She found out about it first. She's 18 in college. Her dad said, okay, you can do it, but I'm going to go with you. He wanted to be with his daughter to march. And then he told me about it. And I said, okay, I want to be with you and my niece together. This should be a family event in addition to a community event. So that was the first catalyst. The second catalyst obviously was I wanted to show support to the Black community, and specifically in addition to my Black friends, including yourself, that I may not understand all of the dynamics, but I get that there's a big problem and I want to be part of the solution. And I wanted to be with these people. I didn't know that there were going to be 60,000 people there, but I wanted to march with folks to make a statement that I support the changes that we're talking about as a society to make it a more fair and equitable society for all. And I think the third reason that I marched, because it was a predominantly African-American crowd. I don't know the exact stats, but I would say 80% of the marchers probably were African-American. 20% were, Anglo, Hispanic, Asian. And I also wanted to set an example by marching for my white, more conservative friends that may be getting a more narrow perspective, depending on what cable channel they listen to. And I wanted them to make sure that they heard my perspective of being there, because I think they know me and trust me. And it was to help build a bridge between people like yourself that I have great relationship with, and others who may not have ties with leaders in the Black community or just lay people in the Black community. So that's where I was there. And then the feeling was mixed emotions. It was, at times I was crying. I couldn't believe this was the United States of America, that, we're still dealing with these kinds of issues. It was surreal to be out there in that kind of environment. I think I was on the older cohort of people. It was a lot of young people. Young people is a relative term. I feel young, but most of the people I believe were younger than myself. And that generation, I would say millennial generation. And so another feeling I had is, on a very pragmatic basis, was like Killer Mike said, the rapper who's my new hero based on his press conference in Atlanta, is how are we going to translate this to get people to register to vote and to vote? Because in our society, at least traditionally, that's how ultimate change happens, is getting leadership in a free society, that you vote into power or you vote out of power. So that was another feeling that I had, was, if all of these folks voted, we could make a lot of change very quickly, and voted at all different levels, not just at a federal level, but state level, local level, community level. So that was the other feeling that I had while I was marching, with these folks, and knowing that they're like when I posted it on my Facebook, I said, just like the coronavirus, it's not a hoax. We still have systemic racism in our country. You can't deny it. And now we need to act and argue quietly, not on TV shows, not on radio, not on social media, but in private, behind the scenes, of what are the best solutions to the different pockets of systemic racism that we have in our country. And there's a role for everybody to play. Everybody, no matter what people's political views are, there's a role for everybody. And so it's got to be converted into, this is an American issue. This is a patriotic issue. This is a civic issue. It's not a Black issue, it's an American issue. And a lot of people in our country, particularly Anglos, Caucasians, whatever the PC correct term is, non-African Americans, have to get engaged and contribute to being part of the solution, as opposed to being indifferent. And indifferent is really part of the problem.
For a number of years now, you have conducted a bi-monthly breakfast meeting where you've called together and you've pulled together such a great cross-section of Houstonians. The diversity in the room is amazing. All ethnic groups, crossing all denominational groups. Most importantly, and sometimes in the discussion and dialogue, crossing both sides of the aisle. What has some of your friends and feedback been from some of that group. I've participated with it. I've gotten to know some of the wonderful people who have attended, who attend rather. What's been some of their feedback about this? Because we always have a spirited dialogue at your breakfasts. I'm sure they have some great opinions about what's been going on. Can you share some of those?
We haven't had this, we call it, it's a private breakfast among friends.
Right.
Since the corona, and I'm hoping to have one on Zoom type call in the coming weeks. But just as should be, I think, expected from what I have seen of people's social media, and folks that I have talked to, but I haven't talked to everybody. But quite honestly, I've talked to more of my African-American friends the last several weeks in the group and outside the group than I have to my Anglo friends and more conservative friends. But I see what some of my conservative friends who are in the group and outside the group post. And I think that there is a need for, as you say, building trust and equity of friendships before you need them, because once you need them, it's too late, so to speak. I think we have a lot of work to do. I think that some folks don't get it, so to speak. And it's part of the reason why when people use that phrase, well, I don't think you get it or you don't understand, is because they're coming from a different reference point and their experiences are different. Sometimes when we say people's experiences are different, it means their experiences are also limited. They haven't walked in somebody else's shoes and haven't maybe put enough effort into trying to understand the other person's perspective. And so there needs to be a lot of dialogue and protesting in other means other than a public march. There needs to be discussions of getting the faith-based community together, as Patrick was saying, the business community folks together, civic community, any aspect of society, I think needs to get together in their lanes, in their comfort level of who they like to, the other peers that they want to be with, to have the discussions of saying, how can we make our institutions more equitable, more just, more inclusive?
On that note, I think you are right. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to give you a chance to have a closing comment, because I think it's important that we hear from voices like yours and Patrick. We need allies. I think we need always three categories of people to move forward. This has been true since the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. We need allies who understand, who will help us, who use their white privilege to help their other friends and neighbors and family who are like them to understand. We need navigators who will help us to travel and navigate the system, because it is about changing the system. The systemic racism is a system thing. And third, we need that very special group of people I call pilots. And a pilot is this. Let me just quickly, the analogy. The leader who may be good on the open sea, who may be good steering the ship on the open sea. When the ship is coming into port, coming into an urban city, coming into dock, coming in to unload their goods so everyone will benefit from what they're carrying, needs that pilot to bring the ship in, who understands the waters, who understands the turbulence, who understands how to shift and move properly to be able to actually. So I think the analogy of needing all three, the allies, navigators, and the pilots, to help us move forward. That's why I look to people like you and Patrick, with your circle of influence, with your circle of friends, getting with us in the African American community and Hispanic community, and helping us understand some of the things we need to know, that we can learn from each other, from our daily lived experientialities that are different. They're just different. We can learn from each other and gain education, knowledge, and wisdom, and move this forward. I
heard Cornel West speak the other night on TV, and he basically was saying, which was how I was raised as a Reformed Jew, social justice is a way of life. And trying to improve, we say tikkun olam, to repair the world, it's not something you do because of one particular incident. You do it because it's a value system. I don't see any conflict with those types of value systems seeking social justice with the value systems of being an American. It's not a liberal thing. It's not a conservative thing. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It is a white thing in the sense of whites still are majority or have control of the large pockets of institutions that have to be more inclusive in opening it up. This should be an American patriotic way of life for everybody. Country as a whole needs to come together and say, okay, we are committed to improving the lives of everybody in the country. We can argue about how to do it, but we shouldn't be arguing about that is the goal of making our society a more perfect union, a better civil society, because that's what a democracy and this great American experiment is all about. Everybody has to participate. And so we all have personal responsibilities we need to do. We can argue and define what that is. And we have community responsibilities that need to happen at the local, state, federal government. And we can argue about that. But you can't argue about participating. Everybody has to participate because that's how a civil society works.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you and look forward to when you get back in the town getting together. And we're going to continue this dialogue along with the others that we work with, as I said, weekly and daily on this issue. And be safe until I see you again.
Thank you, Larry.
All right, change as we know, we've learned this throughout the 60s and now going forward into the 2020 discussion about race and reconciliation. Change does not happen in the mind, but comes from the heart. Change does not happen in the mind, but comes from the heart. And we have defined heart many, many years ago, H-E-A-R-T, which means helping each achieve real tomorrows, helping each achieve real tomorrows. It's about solidarity. It's about solidarity with your fellow human being, about seeing the humanity in your fellow human being, treating them as an equal as your fellow human being. The heart of Houston is about getting to us, not about I and me. It's about we and us. It's always been about we and us. It's always been about we the people. We've somehow never been able to get to we the people. Change happens by understanding that it is really about the four-legged stool that exists in our society when it comes to system change. And we need all four of the legs of the stool to be active at the same time, in service to our common humanity, in service to change of heart. The religious way, the spiritual way is called koinonia, that we really must help everybody, educate them, so we can all have this change of heart about what we should do in this call to be part of the social justice movement. Those four-legged parts of that stool are what social, economic, political, and we tend to forget or want to forget the last one, which is spiritual. Social, economic, political, and spiritual. So let me just end quickly on this. As we continue to discern together what our next new normal will be going forward, how we do this in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of COVID-19, we have to still remember, let's show everyone a little COVID-19 love, because I wear my mask not for myself, but I wear my mask for you. I wear my mask for others. That is part of that whole solidarity thing. And so if we continue to be clear on why we wear our masks, why we're here is in fact is to serve our fellow human being. We're put on the face of the earth for one reason and one reason only, actually, to serve our fellow human being. That we must therefore wear our masks, wash our hands, keep our social distance, and do all we can do to help each other, protect each other, give each other and the ability to receive and give everyday unconditional love. And so if we continue to do these things in the middle of COVID-19, as we get ready for what's going to come next in this era of race and race relations, and move forward through our implicit biases and understand that we all have them and we must therefore work on them going forward, that we can talk about, and I end on this because it leads into the next program, which is talking about the Census 2020, which is all about us, which is all about us helping each other by, first of all, filling out the census, by making sure we get our fair share of resources back, because we have done the census here in Texas and particularly here in Houston. And we're going to have great guests to talk about that. So until then, as always, we look forward to being with you in the weeks to come. Be safe, be well, and as always, peace, power, and love.